Digital Age, where we'll talk about security and privacy imperatives in making enterprises and nations digital. And to take it further, I would like to invite the chair of the session, Mr. Rajendra Pawar, Chairman NIIT, Chair NASSCOM Cybersecurity Task Force. Welcome, sir. It's a privilege to have you here. We request you to please join us. And ladies and gentlemen, panelists are Mr. Raman Roy, Chairman and Managing Director, Quattro, Mr. Karthik Sahani, Regional Director, India NSARC RSA. I request our panelists to please settle down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now I request Mr. Rajendra Pawar, who is the chair of the session, to please take over. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, and may I also add to the welcome to all of you who are here this morning. It's the 10th event, and I think that's an important milestone. And I think some of the priorities have been, the key issues and priorities have been spelt out in the opening session. As the chair of the session, my primary job is to close on time. And I think we have enough time. I have two very eminent participants, speakers on my panel. Mr. Raman Roy, most people in this audience would know him, but there's some people from outside who don't. He has many interesting titles that we have for him in our professional community. He is called the father of BPO, young father. He's a serial entrepreneur. He set up the BPO for Amex, which was an entrepreneurial venture of sorts in this country, and moved on to do the same at GE, which then was Genpact. And then he set out and jumped out and started a company of his own called Spectramind, which when it became big enough, he figured he was getting bored. It was too big, not too interesting, and he sold it to Wipro. And then started what I think is the most interesting of his initiatives, a new company that he runs called Quattro. So he's a serial entrepreneur. He's seen companies big and small. He's seen companies which are multinationals, large Indian companies, and so on. And therefore brings with him a perspective, which is what I'm going to ask him to talk about, which is the user side of the cybersecurity issue. As a company, as a consumer, as a business leader. Karthik Sahani of RSA, engineer and MBA as well. He has been in this industry, security industry, for 18 long years, which is a long, long time in this industry. At Xerox, then NetMagic, McAfee, till it was acquired by Intel, and then since 2010 at RSA. And I've asked him to speak from the security industry suppliers perspective. So there's a demand side and there's a supply side perspective. Because what we're going to talk about briefly is the digital age and how everything is getting connected and how it's a really evolving melting pot kind of situation. And in that situation, what are the critical success factors? So after, I'm going to ask both of them to keep their comments very short because the fun is really in the question and answers. So after both of them have given their perspectives, I will take a few minutes to put on my the hat as the chair of the NASSCOM Cybersecurity Task Force and talk very briefly about where we have reached, where we are at, because that's the kind of response to this large situation. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So with that, Raman, you want to come here and present? Okay. So keep it short because most time is for Q&A.
So this is the third time he said keep it short. Morning, folks. The problem to come in after Dr. Gupta has already given most of the statistics I wanted to talk about. So, but there's no option. You guys will still have to see it. So 10th year of the summit. Let me tell you, having been a part of this journey, the actual size of the whether we call it the economy or the digital economy or the issues linked to it, has grown more than 10 times. And it grows every day. And as Raji said, he asked me to bring out a little perspective on the user side or what the share size is. And I picked up some data from credible third party so that you don't see it as data that I'm giving. Can we have the presentation come up, please? I can see it on my screen, but not here. Do I have to do something here? Now, normally the trouble would be that somebody hacked into this and a different person has control of this, and which is exactly, I guess, the issue that we'll all talk about. But think about it, if you watch the ads on the TV, the number of times you see people trying to, the manufacturers trying to tell you that you can control the devices with your mobile phone. Whether it is your AC, whether it is your TV provider, whether it is your car, there are applications available that tell you when to turn on your car, if somebody's run away with your car, when your kids go in the car, whether it is following a particular path, and so on and so forth. Every device, and I have a few charts in this when I get to show that to you, is connected on the IP protocol. But that also means that there is somebody sitting there who can hack into that device. Somebody can take control of your car just because you're trying to see that your daughter who's going in the car is on that path and is connected via the internet to your mobile phone where you can trace the path. Somebody can break into it and stop the car, or make the car turn somewhere and go somewhere else. And that, frankly, as a father of a daughter, it is a very scary thought for me to say that somebody from outside can take control of our lives and control it for whatever nefarious means that they have. So is this going to be able to work, or should I just... Okay. In Jan 2015, we were 7.2 billion people on this planet, growing slightly. 42% of that were actual internet users. Social media accounts were 29% at about 2 billion. And the unique mobile users were 3.6 billion, 51% of the planet. And if anything, this is growing. But what is more fundamental is that somewhere in 2010, we had 12.5 billion products, unique devices that were connected to the internet. A multiple of the population. And if we look at the projections by the year 2020, there'll be over 50 billion products on this planet that will be connected to the internet through some means. The fundamental aspect is that the adoption of internet or the IP protocol for all these products, whether they be your refrigerator, your car, your mobile phone is the most obvious, but your house, your electricity, etc., all those aspects, the adoption is 5 times faster than the adoption of electricity and telephony. So it is growing at 5 times the pace, and telephony actually caught on very rapidly. So in this world that is going to be that connected with whatever number of devices, the IT services, the all aspects of what has to be done, the biggest aspect is the data breaches. And what can happen into this device that you're happily sitting here, your home security is on the internet, and somebody's breached into your home security, whoever's monitoring that still sees everything is fine while your home is being broken into. The amazing fact is that as per the 2015 Cyber Threat Defense Report, 70% of the respondents said that their networks had been breached in the year gone by. Oh, you can see that now? Okay. 70%, which is up from 62% in 2013, and 20% were breached 6 times or more in a year. A threat to internet means a threat to everything that we do, all devices, everything that we use. 65% of the companies said that they couldn't stop the breach because it evaded their existing preventive measures. 65%. 55% couldn't identify where in their network the breach occurred. 33% of the companies took 2 years or more to discover that a breach had occurred. And 52% said that the lost reputation, brand image, marketplace value due to the breach was significantly impacted. There's a dynamic threat to the entire landscape. It's just not enough to say that we are secure, because for the fraudster, for somebody who's misusing it, it is equally a business, like your and my business. While we are sitting and having a conference here on cybersecurity, the fraudsters are having a conference somewhere else, sitting and talking how to breach that security. They have more money than you and I have to invest in this because they have made it through the easy means. And therefore it becomes a huge aspect. And for the CEO to look at it, there is threat to data, there are regulatory challenges, and the inability of IT, because you have to be a step ahead of where you are. So there are various challenges in today's enterprise of what has to be done on this. There is a link between the business and security. There is the outside aspects of it. There is the persistence and the ability to keep one step ahead. So it is no more, I try to draw up this chart on this. It is no more the enterprise security that we have to look at. It is defending our digital business and defending the ways that we are exposed to the outside world. That is what becomes critical. So what is at stake is not just the adherence, but the ability to keep making that changes, because that is what will impact. And Dr. Gupta spoke about the resources and the expertise being available on tap. Today, we are partially a supplier of that capability to the global world through our robust IT industry. But our internal utilization of that is wanting, because the understanding of that threat is as yet a little limited. With the Digital India aspect of the government, and I'll not go into the details of this, there are 9 pillars of Digital India. All aspects are linked to the internet world and therefore the cyber security. I worked very hard to find this picture, to basically, in that one picture, I think it describes everything. What you see of that iceberg is a small piece. That is what we are seeing of the digital world and the challenges that we have today. but it is the larger aspect of what is hidden. That is what people like you and me have to put our heads together to find how to be able to tackle that, how to be able to structure that, because that is where the challenges lie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Raman. Thanks for keeping it within the time. May I ask now Mr. Karthik Shahani to make his comments.
So it's been a great morning, got insights from everyone, pretty much leaves me with very little to talk about. But I am going to speak on some of those aspects that Raman and the rest of the eminent speakers have alluded. And the fact of the matter is that while we've had this huge growth in technology, even the threat vectors have grown similarly and much faster. If the cyber criminal is not already in your environment, then he will be there. He'll go around, over, or under whatever technology you put in. So just throwing technology and hoping that you're going to block a cyber criminal from coming in is not going to help. Exactly what Raman said. They're better funded, they have more technology at hand, and they're having a conference on figure out how to get around the latest security aspects that you've put. Well then, what is it that's going to change? Another thing that you'll suddenly realize changing is the fact that the number of applications that you have today on the internet, people are finding it extremely difficult remembering passwords. How are you going to remember 1 million passwords for 1 million applications and keep trying to get there? So to try and make it seamless is going to be good old access control that's going to come into play. But this time, the access control is going to be different. It'll use face detections, voice biometrics, shake the phone, all kinds of other technologies, which is an opportunity for us. And those are going to get rid of the ability of having to remember a password and still provide strong authentication. So that's going to be an area where more and more people are going to be working. If you look at this really sad-looking situation where we feel that there's no go, the cyber criminal's already in, we're going to lose out, what are we supposed to really do? The fact is, if we get better visibility, we're going to be able to take some action around it. We don't have visibility, we can take no action around it. And as Raman mentioned, people realized a year later that they had cyber criminals sitting inside the environment. Had they detected that a year ago, a lot of the exfiltration of data that took place could have been reduced and moderated. So, better visibility would mean trying to bring in technologies or have innovative technologies, trying to detect and then take action to remediate it. I think we've all talked about the threats, we've all kind of realized what implications of it are, but let me touch upon the positive side of it. The way Digital India is going, there are going to be huge aggregators. Aggregators will have information on all the people who are going to be using those services, and that needs to be protected. So there's a huge opportunity for us to build technologies which will be able to give faster access to people and also ensure that we protect that information that's there. There are going to be large providers of technology, but these large providers of technology mostly focus on their core technologies. So there is a bridging requirement. So there's adjacency of products that will be required. I think that's another big area of opportunity for us in India. Build adjacency products that link applications, link and integrate other solutions so that we make it easier for the big boys. What's already been done, no point reinventing the wheel. But this is one area that we can really work on. Startups, for them, this is a great opportunity. I think the government also is looking at the public-private partnership, and this could be another area that can be really leveraged. So while we have our discussions, I think some of it will come out, and I would, any questions regarding what you feel on technology aspects, I'm happy to answer from a supplier standpoint. We'll go ahead with the questions from your side, and probably that will make it more interactive and interesting.
Thank you, Raman, and thank you, Karthik. Just a couple of minutes on what, as a NASSCOM initiative, along with, of course, DSCI, we are looking at now. The point was made that PM had made a very interesting comment when we had the NASSCOM Silver Anniversary celebration earlier this year. And he, of course, did commend NASSCOM for the growth of the sector and so on, but then he made a very specific reference to an observation that he had, an experience that he had. And he mentioned that he had been, less than a year as Prime Minister when he came for this event. And he made a very interesting comment. He said that in that period of time, he had met about 50 heads of states in India and also during his travels. And he said that when he meets the heads of state, somewhere in that time he gets a few minutes quiet time and asks them, what are the one or two things that keep you awake in the night? And he said that 70% of them, more than 2/3, mentioned as one of the top 3 worries they had as cybersecurity. And so he flipped the idea very interestingly. He said that if most of the people in the world have an unsolved problem, is it not NASSCOM's greatest opportunity to become the problem solvers of the world for this very significant problem? So he flipped that threat into an opportunity and posed that as the opportunity to NASSCOM, and suggested that we set up a group that can study this problem and respond. So the task force which we created has been at work, and unlike many task forces, having been involved in task forces for a few decades, we did decide that it's not the one document which we throw somewhere in space and it keeps floating, that we should start working, but we should work on a few ideas. So we put together 10 ideas. And I'm not going to go into the detail of each, except to say that as an industry body in NASSCOM, and then of course DSCI works closely with NASSCOM to support its goals and objectives. As an industry body, we wanted to translate this opportunity into a real opportunity and to give it a shape and scale. So we put an aspiration in front of ourselves, which is that we were $1.5 billion in terms of the cybersecurity industry last year, when the industry is 146 billion. That's about 1%. But looking at the growth rate of this sector globally, and even here, which is upward of 50%, at least in high growth areas, look at Israel, look at India, look at the sectors within US, we said that by the time the IT industry becomes 350 billion, which is our goal for 2025, which is the 10-year goal, we said the cybersecurity component can indeed become about 10% of that. So we put a number of 35 billion as the size of the cybersecurity industry in India for the global market and the Indian market. That will not translate linearly to a number of people, but we are looking at about 1 million people directly and indirectly involved to deal with this 35 billion size. And 1 million new jobs is very important for this country, even if you leave the issue of cybersecurity aside. The third important goal that we have set is that about 1,000 new startups in this 10 years, which have focused on this sector. So this defined the bounds of what we are attempting to do in a decade's time to deal with both sides, the story, the demand side, as Raman tried to articulate qualitatively, and I think all of us are becoming more and more aware, except that there's so much of this news that I worry that we may become immune and say, okay, it's going to happen. When you hear bad news, too much of bad news, you become immune to it. But on the supply side as well, we are looking at great advances which are being made, though we know that the challenges are bigger than the solutions at this time. So very quickly, the kind of areas we're looking at, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. First thing we said is there is a lot of things which are already happening, a lot of initiatives already in place, a lot of policies which can support this idea. And Dr. Gupta mentioned some of those. So our first thing really was, can we take stock of those which are highly actionable and put extraordinary energy to extract value from ideas which are already on the plate? Because we can keep putting more ideas on the plate. So that was the first, and that's the first area. The second is to do with building technical capacity. So if we study the progress or the fast progress in some countries, a very important thing is the question of silos referred to both by Mr. Pillai as well as Dr. Gupta. So here there are three significant silos. Within that there are multiple small silos, but there's industry, there's government, and there's academia. So when we look at success stories anywhere, the coming together of these three seems to be an absolute must. So we are saying that the technology creation which is going to fire up our startups has to happen, and the center of that is going to be the academic world, the research community. Government has to fund them, and startups have to work closely with them. So this three-way equation, we are making a concrete recommendation of 1,000 crores to be made available to startups and academics trying to create new technologies as a concrete idea. Then, from the industry point of view, to respond, if we were seeing that in some countries in the world where there's great success, there seem to be clusters getting formed, cybersecurity clusters. We hear of that in Amsterdam, we hear of that in UK, we hear of that in the US, and of course Israel is a shining example. So these clusters seem to have a character which is distinct from our SEZs, which we did in the software business. And the clusters seem to involve again the three players, the talks of government, talk of academia, and talk of companies and startups. So we are looking at, as an industry initiative, the whole idea of clusters and proposing that a few cities or a few states, cities and states, take the lead to do what it takes to create the clusters, and we are working into the details. So that's another very important supply side idea. Then we are looking at building brand India for cybersecurity. So right now we are at a very small level. We have a great aspiration. We have to build a program to get the world to know that things are happening in cybersecurity. So we'll obviously start talking about that only when we see things happen. But these things have a latency, they have a long-term period. So, in fact, starting from this coming NASSCOM annual event, which happens in February every year, we have a special track. Not only that, in October, in the product conclave that happens in Bangalore, the second largest event of NASSCOM, we created a parallel track for cybersecurity. So the building, the awareness that this is something we are chasing and something we want to do big, and then as results happen, that something is happening. Building brand India as a place for cyber. Today, Israel has a great brand on being the place where much work is done on cybersecurity. But we see scalability as an issue. And I think since even today, 2/3 of the work in cyber is still services. 1/3 is products. 2/3 is still services, and large will remain. And we have a great competitive advantage and a reputation for that. So building brand India and brand India for cyber is another large initiative which will take funding and support. Then there's a whole question of skills. I think that point has been made. So we are looking at, under the skill building, it's what has to precede it is awareness. Every political leader, every corporate leader, they have to have the awareness of the extent of challenge. So while we do talk of companies beginning to take cybersecurity seriously, it is not serious enough. We have created the CISO post, Chief Information Security Officer post, but we have discussed in the last year in the number of workshops we did that there isn't enough importance given to a CISO in the board, for example. There's no board representation. There isn't even a management committee representation in many companies. So the awareness question is for political leaders, organizational leaders, academic leaders, that what is the priority for the subject? So there's education that we're planning on that level of awareness. Then we're going to the other end to say, like they've done in the US and Israel already, and now coming up in Europe, is go into high schools. Right from the time children start using their device. Even today, all of you, many of you, or most of you have kids who bring a pen drive from school and plug it into your computer. And you don't realize what's happened at that time, the risk that's created. So, risk about using their device, whatever the device is, that has to be educated. Children have to be educated. And in fact, if you have a billion hand phone, then there are a billion points of risk. So that literacy, if I may use the word literacy, of how to do simple things, like you never leave your home leaving the door ajar. You just never do if everybody's leaving the house. There are simple things which can cause a huge amount of safety. So there's that kind of literacy that needs to be done. Then ultimately, of course, it's the skill building which we have to look at, and there's concrete numbers that we are looking at on how it is to be done. Then there's the demand side question, that how do we generate demand in India at least? And there are two recommendations that come from there. One is corporate disclosures. So quite obviously, when we raised this point with NASSCOM members as companies, they said, look, nobody wants to disclose you had a hack. Just like you don't tell a neighbor that the servant stole something and took it away from home. It doesn't look good. However, so we said, while we will not ask the Department of Company Affairs, Ministry of Company Affairs to impose requirements of disclosure of breaches, but at least disclosure of actions that companies are doing to protect themselves in terms of staffing, in terms of funding, in terms of actions. So disclosures on cybersecurity, safety, actions being done, being brought in as a requirement. Similarly, many years ago, when we were all driving the IT industry growth in government, we got many state government to mandate that X% of the budget, state budget, would be spent on IT. And many of us personally at NASSCOM were involved, state after state, to make sure that that became a policy decision, that 2% and some now 3% of a state budget spent on IT. This time around, we are getting states to say that of the IT budget, X% upfront you will spend on cybersecurity. So these two actions specifically will generate demand, and these are seen as recommendations. And then there's a big question of who will educate the nation, or not educate, who will inform the nation about the risks and threats and the priority of threats. So there is a role that we've identified for DSCI, which NASSCOM in its council has okayed, and that is of a use case clearing house. Many of you know this, so it's not new to you, but cyber seems to be the only area, where thought leadership is not in the hands of the academics. Thought leadership is in the hands of the criminals in this field. All of us are only reacting. Most of the subjects you have papers being presented, Nobel laureates who do a great job. Here, thought leadership is what happened with Sony, what happened at Target, what happened XYZ. The initiative there is not of the police, of those who save. It is of those who created the problem. So therefore, even the educational institutions are asking us, if I have to do research, what should I do it on? Which project should I do? If startups are looking at area, which area should they look at? So we felt that there's a very important role to be played of a use case clearing house, which keeps the world and keeps the country abreast of what is happening in this field. And all of that can be done through a portal, which is mobile friendly, so anybody can figure out. So this is the concrete recommendation which NASSCOM has already embraced, which is that DSCI will become the use case clearing house. So these are some ideas, and as you can see, the many of these are already actioned. NASSCOM has already set aside a significant fund and contracted with a large firm to build a 10-year roadmap of how we will build a $35 billion industry. So everybody in this room will be involved one way or the other, and tomorrow at concluding time, we'll be calling for some of you to show your hands if you want to get involved. But the demand side, supply side pictures is clear, some actions are clear, and now we'd like to leave the next 12 to 13 minutes that we have, maybe 15, for specific questions. I'll make a request that you identify yourself, make it a very short, pointed question, and I'll direct it to our speakers to give a short, pointed answer. Yes, we're waiting for the first question. Yes, please.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have the standing mics over here. You can please come and ask your question from here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hi, good morning to all. I'm Nitesh and I run an information security services company, Sacumen. So I have a question to Mr. Rajendra. So you talked about the ambitious target of, 35 billion, billion, IT security industry in India, right? And talking about the 1 million task force. So my question is, what's the initiatives or plan you have to enable the, the youth who is coming there and, make them enable as part of this, right? Because from IT enablement, right? Even when people are joining Wipro and these big companies, right? There's a 6 months training program which gets done for these people to get them enablement on the application development. But IT security is a totally different thing altogether, right? So what are the things you are planning to do to, to have the youth enabled for, or sort of prepared for those, job ready for information security
Yeah,
jobs?
so there's a host of initiatives that are being thought of, but the academic world has a very important role to play. So also non-formal skill building industry has a role to play. And some of the questions very often they ask us is what should we teach? What are the subjects? So as I said, DSCI's role to talk about areas of importance, to signal to them what needs to be done. A. B. Some amount of funding when we're looking at academia to be funded to do research along with startups. There will be masters and PhD students and then courses can be given to undergrad as well. So in the formal sector, those kind of initiatives. Then we are saying that with Ministry of HRD to say that in schooling, can we introduce it into as part of the curriculum. So there's a range of initiatives which are being done. And once they are signaled, I think we'll see a lot of enterprise coming forward. This country has had a very strong training industry history. And a lot of those people are already beginning to identify the curriculum and programs and so on and so forth. So I think it will be a set of actions that will come forward. Okay? Yes, there's a question there. And who has the third question? You should be ready to come as soon as the second one is done at the mic.
Okay. Good morning. This is Nilesh from Genpact. So with all the digital India, and everything in focus from the Prime Minister and everybody, so I just have a basic question. Do we also see some updates or changes in the cybersecurity laws and the data privacy laws? Because that's one field where, in India we are not, abreast with our Western counterparts.
Either of you want to comment?
Yeah. Okay, so while the IT Act is really well written, and we also have the cyber laws clearly defined, the problem is really of history. If you look at our legal system now, it's been built over a number of years, and you've had cases and predisposed judgments which form the judgments for future. So just like that, it isn't an easy task to get this up and running, get the people educated, get the judiciary to be able to provide all the information required for a judgment. So I think this is something that is there. but it's not an instant answer and instant success. Even in the West, those the whole judiciary in terms of prosecution, judge, and other people are not completely ready today, and they don't have a history to fall back on as case precedences. So I think answer to your question is, we don't have a robust running system at this point in time, but it's going to get to it at some point in time as time progresses.
If I may just add to that, the desire of our lawmakers to create a framework is very high, but it is so amorphous and unknown that it is challenging. In fact, we have a session tomorrow where some of our members of parliament are going to come and talk exactly about the challenges that they are seeing in this. There is also a learning from the international platform. We are trying to see what other countries are doing, what the good learnings are. But again, the aspect is that it is still, in terms of technology, it is boundaryless, and it is the unknown. So we don't want to do anything that puts constraints on the growth of the good, and unfortunately the growth of the bad. But it is challenging. You will see some regulation coming in. You will see regulation to punish the bad guys. You will see regulation to allow the good guys to prosper. Some of the startup culture that Mr. Pawar spoke about, that is a critical aspect of what will fire this new economy that will come into being, and you'll see regulation around that too.
I think we obviously would strengthen our argument on the education of the legal system as well, literacy and education of the legal system as well, so they can respond more quickly. Yeah, third, and the fourth question, if the person is already ready, then you can, please, if you can come to the mic and get ready. Yeah, please go ahead.
My name is Sunil Kapila. I am from Tata Advanced Systems. My question is, how about setting an infrastructure which is open, virtual, on a cyber lab perspective nationwide, where all budding young entrepreneurs who don't have the computing capabilities or the resources to put their hands on. There's a lot of content available on the forums, in the internet, but actually doing is believing and learning skill building. So are there any initiatives the government and the industry are making available which are pretty open, not controlled by conglomerates who kind of, do it, where people can just walk in, spend time together in forums and work on cybersecurity solution finding?
So let me just say, in terms of what we are thinking about over and above what already exists, is we see the academia playing a very crucial role in this equation. And so we are recommending specifically that where startups want to work along with whatever academic capability exists, which has to be strengthened, those become the nodal points where such centers can be put up and the funding can be provided. So in a concrete sense, that is one of the ideas we're looking at, because the nexus of government, industry, academia is required, and we see that the hosting of that could very well be in the laboratories in select institutions across the country, where startup phenomena happens, where the infrastructure is created, and the academic community tends to be, as we know, perhaps the most open kind of architecture that we can create. We do have labs today, but then they're very often shrouded in too much secrecy, and people can't enter.
My point was, they're very elitist. For instance, entrepreneur doesn't have to be a PhD to get into these elite.
He doesn't have to be a PhD,
No,
but
I know, but there is a bureaucracy around academia also, pardon me for saying this, which kind of restricts this. You reach out to 5, 10, 20 IITs or whatever. There's some stuff happening there, but the vast majority...
we have to broad base it. I think that point is well taken.
You've got to have set kiosk kind of available infrastructure which people can go and spend...
Okay, so good thought. So I think we'll put that.
So there are aspects of whether entrepreneur identification or talent identification that we can debate, but today within the IITs, within the engineering colleges, within forums like this, you are seeing hackathons that is saying that we'll have a competition and let's see if you can hack into this. because that leads to a talent identification. And once you identify talent, once you identify 50 people in IITs who participated in this and who have the mental framework, though as yet not the formal education, but they've educated themselves, creating a platform to grow that. And that's the point that you're making, to make that a larger movement. Some baby steps have started, but today the recognition, the social acceptability, the recognition, that is always a lagging indicator. When the mother says, what will the child after 12th class will do, and say will become a cyber security expert, that there is some distance to be covered, which is the point that you're making. But I think the intention to broad base it is essential. One day there'll be a matrimonial ad in the papers that says, looking for a boy and hopefully cyber security expert.
So, just an answer to that one. Yeah. Raman, you alluded to this thing of a hackathon. And we ran a hackathon 2 years ago. We had 3,000 participants. And then slowly, games and people went to the next stage. And finally we came to the 15 winners. And brilliant, all of them brilliant. Most of them all freelance and some working for BPOs. And then we said, how many of you would like to come and join our research lab and become, ethical hackers? We didn't get a single.
So that is the social part that I'm talking about.
They just wanted
it
freedom.
will happen. There will be financial remuneration, there will be acceptance by society.
Even greater freedom to work, and that leads to bigger security issues. So while we form these labs, while we form all these, many of the people there will still feel it restrictive in nature. So we've got to look at it from a very different aspect.
We have to find some super smart entrepreneurs who will know how to weave them in. I guess we'll have to leave it there. Yeah.
I am Lieutenant Commander Mansi Biswas from TCS. Yeah, I am Mansi Biswas. You referred that PM wants to bring India to come up as a leader in the cyber security. And then you said our companies don't report the data breaches and leave that alone, and we should ask the companies to share what best practices they are doing. So I would suggest that unless until we prove that we do report, how do we tell to the world that we are the best? So I suggest we should at least set a date. Let's say it is 220 or whatever it should be, a date. But there should be a date suggested to the companies. Prepare yourself, and by this date you will have to start, reporting. And as of now, we can start sharing our best practices in all the leadership.
That's a good thought. But we thought what people are open to is to disclose their initiatives. That they're open to. So that becomes a stepping stone. You start that first. Then your extent of disclosure can improve.
Yes.
Okay? What's the level of people you have? What's the amount of money you spend? What initiatives have you done? But because I think even in the international forum, the same issue is being talked about. That if you force companies to disclose their breaches, then you will actually get them to put the hatchet down so much that nothing will happen. So it's a progressive process where you start disclosing your initiative, your actions, which people are keen to brag about. So you have to recognize that to force it may actually have a backlash in the early phase. So letting people talk about what they are doing as preventive actions is a good starting point. But again, I think someone has to put a date, and frankly, for us to recommend a date to government ministries to put a date on industry is not such an acceptable idea. What has been considered acceptable, earlier even there was a hesitation, was to say that we should start disclosing initiatives that the company is doing in this space, much like people do for many other areas as a starting point.
Why I said it, I attended this DSCI 2 years back in Delhi. That day also someone was projecting data and India was not there. Data
Was
of,
not there.
Yeah, because data breaches of US, China, all the countries, but India doesn't report. That's a well-known fact.
On cybersecurity, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, so that's the baseline. Let's take that as a baseline and have no defensiveness about it. That's where we are. Now we want to get somewhere, and we have to make a roadmap.
We should think about it.
Yes, so I think we shouldn't hesitate. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our session. I just want to make the point that I think, and it's repeating the point, that the issue is bigger than we are willing to accept or admit. Personally, we all know that. And it's only going to get bigger the more connected the devices become. And I think Raman gave some interesting numbers on the fact that, 5 times the number of the population with the number of devices. So the risk is going up, and on the other side, the opportunity is going up as well. And I think as a country, we need to recognize both sides of it, prepare for it. We have to protect ourselves, but I think also, if we have to help protect the world, we can build an industry. So with that, I'd like to thank both my panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing insights and for presenting a wonderful panel discussion.